Real Talkers, as we wrap up every week, courtesy of our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, we give you a chance to bring us your hottest takes, to blow off a little steam, to say what needs to be said, quite frankly. It's the Flamethrower, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. This one from Rob, who writes in. He says, Jespo, talking about Alberta separation. I talked to you about how this is impacting conversations at family gatherings around the dinner table. I talked about some of my personal family members. Rob says, Jespo, I understand your desire to get along with family members who may have fallen down this weird right-wing derp and want to give them a voice. But like all my life, I have heard only those voices, loud and ridiculous. But I've been biting my tongue because they're family and friends. And yeah, getting along is important. But we've all heard what they have to say. He says again and again and again. Rob says, I lived in the Beltline in Calgary during the convoy tantrums, and I got to enjoy seeing white nationalists spew slurs at people in my neighborhood. Chemtrails, the weird obsession with trans people, anti-vax idiocy. How much more of a voice do we owe them? He says, I've heard what they have to say, as has everybody else, and now I'm taking a pass. Let's talk about one of the many scandals the Alberta government's trying to hide instead of this MAGA stupidity. That from Rob on Alberta separation. What about this one from Dave, who says, the book bans. The Alberta government taking aim at school libraries. Who's behind this? He says it's Take Back Alberta. It's David Parker. He says he promised to take over school and library boards to make conservative Christianity the basis for it all, just like he took over the UCP board. This is one of a dozen issues and legislation taking away freedom versus the freedom train. He says, I don't know if this is a flamethrower, but at the very least a butane lighter. No, Dave, you're in the flamethrower for sure, buddy. How about this one from Ted, who says, Jessica, I want to thank you for a great episode a few days back with Laura Winton from the Library Association, Jim Turk from the Center for Free Expression. I'm outraged, he says, that the Education Minister Nicolaitis ignored teachers, librarians, and school boards in this proposal relating to library books. So I filled out the survey. Still outraged, I filled it out again, says Ted. And then I got a friend in Vancouver to fill it out. And then I got a friend in Switzerland to fill it out. The point is, any survey with integrity includes software to prevent multiple responses. He says this could be the work of bots or any group that's trying to stack the deck. Ted says, I've got a child going into grade 10 next year. I don't want his reading choices determined by a bogus survey. That from Ted. How about this one from Nesen, who says, Charles Adler on your Monday episode was absolutely correct about productivity. We got to stop just exporting our resources. Value is achieved in producing products from these resources. Let's keep the money in our pockets, not donate it to the Americans. That from Nesen. And how about this one from Touring Zebra, who says, guys, I really appreciated the deeper dive into the subject of library books in Alberta on your Tuesday episode. You had insightful guests who addressed much of the nuance and the difficulty that's tied up in the topic. That said, I do want to push back on the banter that followed between Jespo and Johnny regarding the 10 Commandments posted in schools in Texas. Says, I fully agree with Johnny that in public spaces, nobody should be excluded by the promotion of a single religious perspective. However, when you guys said, or when Johnny says, he says, I don't think the 10 Commandments is inherently wrong. Remember you said this? You said you don't agree. What you said, but I can sure agree with like don't steal. I don't remember. You said I agree with don't steal, don't kill, don't have sex with your neighbor's wife. Touring Zebra says those who push to include the 10 Commandments in public places like schools will do that. They'll leave the no-brainers front and center. You know, don't murder, don't steal. Who wouldn't agree with that? But they'll quietly leave out, like, you shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make yourself an image of anything. You shall not misuse the name of God. You shall keep the Sabbath holy. And finally, you shall not covet your neighbor's house, wife, servant, ox, donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Guess what that means, guys? That means your neighbor's wife is property. He says the truth is, having listened to the show for many, many months, the quality of your character is evident, but it must be recognized that this is the reverse idea of that library book controversy, right? With books, they can show the worst out of context and thereby incite an emotional response that will reduce resistance to further bans. But with something like the 10 Commandments, they'll get everybody to agree with the easy bits so that they can bring the rest along for the ride with little resistance. I will never support the 10 Commandments being posted in public places, as it would be implicit agreement and subtle indoctrination. I would argue not subtle at all, by the way, for all who occupy those spaces. And I very much appreciate that Canadian society is one of diversity and freedom to live our own religion or lack thereof, and we need to protect public spaces as places of healthy dialogue and debate. Signing off as Patreon supporter, Touring Zebra. Thanks to those of you that take the time to submit your flamethrowers. You can do it anytime, 24/7, to talk at ryanjesperson.com. The flamethrower is proudly presented by the DQs, family owned in Palisades, Namao, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. When you're in there to pick up a flamethrower signature stack burger and a blizzard this beautiful weekend, you make sure you let them know that Real Talk sent you. Have an amazing weekend, friends. Keep it between the lines, and we'll see you again soon right here on Real Talk.